This is the Tom Bigby Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. I write about a small town in northeast Mississippi called Columbus. And sometimes I write about the rest of the state. This episode is episode 7 in my podcast series on the Columbus Housing Authority. What started with looking into a truck that they purchased and got scammed on has made me look more carefully at how they do their business, and it makes me question a lot of things that they do and makes me wonder who else is scamming them. Let's jump right into this. Let's talk about the janitorial services. They use a company called Top Tier. Now, Top Tier is a local janitorial service, but it's not listed under janitorial in Google. It is a locally owned company. They are listed with the Secretary of State. It is an LLC owned by Andrika, I believe it's pronounced Andrika, Hendricks Guyton. She has no URL, and her email is a personal email attached to the state listing, and it lists her home as her business address. But let's talk about their billing. So I looked at everything from October 23rd to the end of April of 2025. And what I see is very concerning because there's no consistency. So I'm going to read out some numbers to you, and I'm going to tell you what the ledger says that the monies went toward. For example, on October 13th, 2023, the ledger indicates multiple units were cleaned. Doesn't tell you how many. It doesn't tell you which ones. And she charged $2,775, and she got a check for it. And then 2 weeks later, there is one that says that the main office was cleaned, something on Avenue B and something on Alfalfa, for $1,975. Now, I'm going to tell you how I did this math. I looked at each of these, and let's be generous and say each of these buildings took 8 hours to clean. So let's say that's 3 days of work. 3 days of work, and an individual was paid $1,975. Now, keep in mind the majority of the units are either 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom. I don't know that we have any 3 bedrooms, but there again, I'm not that informed on the size of the units. However, I did go look at the units that I can see a specific address on, and they are predominantly 1 bedroom. Now, if I calculate that this person spent 8 hours per place that they cleaned, if you did 3 buildings and you were paid $1,975, that's 24 hours worth of work, meaning that they were charging $82.29 an hour for labor. Now, I don't know that because we don't have that broken out, but I will find it out. So then I look at the next installment of their pay, and they, on the 14th of November, 2 weeks later, they're paid for cleaning the main office, something in the William Roberts facility, and a house on 14th Avenue. And that was 3 units at $2,070, meaning, again, if I divided that by 8 hours a day times 3, which is 24, then this person was paid $86 per hour for their work. Wow, that's pretty expensive if you compare that to like Balcom or Robinson or any of the other janitorial services in Columbus. 2 weeks later, she cleaned again, Maine, Clover, and Wheat, and she was paid $18.70. So there's a lot of inconsistency in here, because then if you break that one down, that's $77.91 per hour. Then on December 14th, they cleaned Maine, Alfalfa, 24, and 1 house on Wheat, and she was paid $2,865, which equates to $119 an hour. And then on December 29th, just the main office was cleaned, and that was $300. So if I assume that was an 8-hour job, although I doubt it was, she was making $37.50 an hour. The next pay period was January 11th of 2024. That was for $17.70, and that breaks down to $73.75 an hour. So as you can see, none of these make sense. On February 15th, the main office and one on 7th were cleaned, and the calculation would make that $122.81 an hour. So the inconsistency per hour is very concerning. And then the amounts. So it's very curious that she gets paid, assuming that these are 8-hour jobs. It could be a 4-hour job and she's making more. She's getting paid $82 an hour, $86 an hour, $77 an hour, $119 an hour, $37.50 an hour, $73.75 an hour, $72 an hour, and $122.81 an hour. Now, I haven't broken out all the numbers on every one of these, but excuse me, that is incredible to be paid that rate in Columbus. Now, let's break down more of these. As I said, every 2 weeks, she's getting a check. So on February 29th of 2024, that was almost $3,000. On March 14th, it was $2,685. On April 15th, it's just the main office that she cleaned, and she was paid $3,225. Wow, that's a lot per hour if that's 1 times 8 hours. On April 30th, 2 weeks later, she cleaned 4 units and was paid $37.75. 2 weeks later, on May 15th, she cleaned 24th and Wheat and was paid $25.80, so $2,580 for 2 units. Wow, that's more than $120 an hour. That's a lot more than $120 an hour. Then on June 5th, she cleaned 3 units and she was paid $33.60. And then on June 14th, 2 weeks later, she cleaned the main office and something on 24th and was paid $19.40. And then on July 3rd, she cleaned just the office and the William Roberts Center. I'm guessing somebody had a get together there, and that was $1,000 for 2 spaces. And then on the 15th of July, she was paid $1,000. And on the 29th, she was paid $1,620. On August 15th, she cleaned 3 units for $27.30, meaning she was paid $113 per hour. Then on August 29th, she cleaned the main office plus 2 units and was paid $1,470, which is $61 an hour if each unit took 8 hours. Then on September 13th, she cleaned the main office plus 3 units and was paid $2,320, which is almost $100 an hour. On September 30th, she cleaned 3 facilities, one of which was the main office, and was paid $13.70. On October 15th, she cleaned 1 residence and 1 main office for $13.60. On October 30th, she cleaned the main office and 2 units for $12.90. There's really no consistency in the amount she charges. Then on November 15th, the office plus 2 units was $15.30. Then on November 27th, an office and 2 units was $14.35. And then on December 13th, the office plus 2 units was $19.40. So for 2 units and an office, we had a fee of $1,000. We had a fee of $16.20. We had a fee of $14.70. We had a fee of $12.90. We had a fee of $15.30 and $14.35 and $19.40, and all of them are different. Nothing consistent in any of these. In January 30th of 2025, she cleaned the main office and 1 unit for $755, which is far more reasonable. Then on February the 14th, the main office and 1 unit was $14.85, so back up to the higher price. Then on March 14th, 1 unit and the main office was $755 again. Then on March 28th, the main office and 1 unit was $655. And then on April 15th, just the main office was $450. And the last one I have is April 30th, 2025 for the main office and 1 unit for $605. So I have some questions. And this isn't going to be a very long episode just because this has me very curious. Was this job bid? Was there a bid that went out and this person won the bid, and is her contract for 3 years, or was it reopened for bid each year? Is she bonded? Are there multiple employees? Her state filing, it doesn't make that clear. Sounds like it's a single person doing the job. Why this company? Why was this company hired? I'm glad they're local. I think that's a great thing. I have nothing wrong with that. And this person may be the best person for the job. I just don't know. My curiosity goes to is, where's their agreement? Where's their agreement per hour? And what's their rate and frequency for her to work and clean these buildings. How many hours are agreed to per unit, and how many hours a week is she to clean the office, or is it every 2 weeks? We just don't know. There's not enough information, and there's not a lot of transparency. That whole issue with transparency is something that is really bothering me, and I'm going to be asking for some invoices. So let's go back to 2023, and I only have a few months of purchases that are also made in addition to all these two years worth of top tier cleaning. Let's talk about some of the purchases that have been made and how poorly the ledger reflects what actually was purchased. Or maybe it doesn't. So I'm going to go to the very first one I have, which the top of the ledger I have is from October of 2023. So on October 13th of 2023, the Columbus Housing Authority made a purchase at Military Hardware, and the item is described as saw blades. And they spent $1,810.44 on saw blades. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a heck of a lot of saw blades. Then, on the 13th, they wrote a check to Nolan's. And Nolan's is like a supply company for commercial grade repairs and building. Nolan's, a blower motor and Freon was purchased for $10,132. Now, that may be accurate, but the next one has me really concerned. The same day, a check was written to Refrigerator Supply Company for a motor, a fan blade, a line set, and coupling for $13,139. Another bill was paid to Southern Pipe for an air handler, a line set, Freon, and a heater for $44,346. Now, I don't know what kind of heater it was, but an air handler, even a commercial grade one, shouldn't cost more than $1,200. $44,000 seems pretty high, and I'm really curious about that invoice. And then on October 30th, the next check was cut to Lowe's for ceiling fans, tools, and batteries for $1,983. That's a lot of ceiling fan. Also on October 30th was one of the checks to Top Tier Cleaning Service, which we just discussed. And the next check was written to USA Electrical Sales for a transformer, bulbs, and ballast for $1,200. The next billing cycle would have been October 13th, 2023. And it says GE Appliances stoves for $3,600. Doesn't say how many. Could have been one, could have been 10. We don't know. Then on the same day, a bill was paid to H&R AgriPower for repairs to a tractor to replace a clutch for $3,048. Now, I don't know what tractor they have because they hire out all their work done on the yards, and I'm not seeing what they use a tractor on. I could be wrong, but I don't know of anything that they use a tractor on, unless it's over at the nonprofit, which is Palmer Home. And if that's the case, why is that check being paid for out of the Columbus Housing Authority checkbook? Don't know. That'll take some investigation. Then on November 13th, they went back to Military Hardware a month later, and they bought valves. And those valves cost $4,610.49. Those must be a heck of a lot of valves. I wonder what those valves even went to. What kind of valves? It must have been gold valves. Then another bill was paid on the 13th to Olney Sales for screen doors. $5,608 worth of screen doors. Did every building get a new screen door? I don't know. That's a lot of screen doors for $5,608. They also wrote another check to Southern Pipe for AC units and an air handler for $20,437. And then they paid on the 30th of November, BAM, who does their lawn service, $2,296. Now, I don't know which units they took care of or if that's all units. It's not clear. There's no designation in their ledger. Also on the 30th, K&K Clean came and cleaned the drains and took care of some wasps for $1,110. Then they sent a check to Nolan on the 30th for a hot water heater and a heater kit for $2,594. Now it's singular in the ledger. It's only one hot water heater and one heater kit, so that must be a heck of a hot water heater. Then on the 30th, they also paid the cleaning crew again, but that's already been talked about. And then on December 14th, they paid JBHM Architects $44,725. But it has no note on the ledger what they needed an architect for and what that architect was doing. I thought their buddy Rusty, who's on retainer, was an architect. Who knows? $44,000 with no note is a lot of money to not detail in your ledger. Then on the 14th of December, they paid their management computer services web host, and they have a ticket system for repairs. They paid them $24,277 for web hosting for the year. That's a lot of money for web hosting. My web hosting for multiple platforms is less than, it's certainly not $24,000. I think I pay maybe $300 for the whole year. On the December 14th, they went back to Military Hardware. They bought more saw blades and outlets and spent another $1,200. There was also a check to PDQ for burners and oven igniters for $1,400, and to Refrigeration Supply Company for a control board and an air handler for $5,700. And then the same day, they paid Southern Pipe and Supply for a compression adapter for $18,491. That's a heck of an expense. Wonder what it went to. Which building, which facility? No note. On December 14th, they went to Home Depot Pro, or they ordered from Home Depot Pro, it's not sure, gasket sleeves and doorknobs to the tune of $2,197. Then they also paid Top Tier Cleaning again. That was $2,865. And then on December 29th, they paid BAM LLC for lawn care for $22.96. Now, the rest of December is all dated December 29th, 2023. A check was written to GE Appliances for refrigerator for $5,900. I'm presuming there was more than one refrigerator, though it is singular in the check ledger. Military Hardware, they bought some CFL bulbs and screws and spent $1,000. How many screws did they buy? They wrote a check to Mills Morris for latex gloves for $358. At Nolan's, they bought an AC unit. This is just before Christmas, or just before New Year's, for $4,224. They went to Refrigerator Supply Company and bought markers and a leak detector for $10,000. Then they sent a check to Southern Pipe for a commode and an air conditioning unit and possibly a furnace for $12,000. And then they wrote a check to Tolman Company for plumbing parts and faceplates for $1,742. Now, I got a lot of questions about their accounting, and I've got a lot of questions about how they go about doing this. Now, I'm going to bring up something that has to do with accounting, but doesn't have to do with accounting, but it has to do with leadership. Keep in mind that the director of the Columbus Housing Authority is also the controller and the accountant. It's the case of the fox watching the hen house. But I want to bring something up that this is important and why it's important. We don't know where a lot of this money is going for sure. I am going to make the presumption that if I find the actual invoices, I would be able to connect actual purchases to those companies. But my question is, the bookkeeping's lackadaisical. And while I am not an accountant, I do know that these notes are critical in reconciling books, especially when you are a non-tech supported entity, as I've been told that the majority of the purchase orders and the invoices at Columbus Housing Authority a lot of them are still paper bound. So this becomes even more critical when you are a paper-oriented facility, which leads me to questions about Mr. Graythry. The job of an executive director is pretty strenuous. Add to the fact that he travels a lot, and I question if he's really giving his attention to the accounting. If he's gone a week at a time, who's doing the books then? Who's watching the accounts? Who's supervising the purchases? Are they necessary? He's often gone 2 and 3 weeks out of each month to conferences. So I question the oversight and if he's capable of doing the accounting and being the executive director if he's gadding about so often. which led me to look up what else he's involved in. So I did a simple Google search, and I found Mr. Gray 3 is connected to an organization, which is a worthy organization, called ParoleToPride.org. I think it's wonderful people volunteer with organizations. However, when one does, one must watch for conflict of interest if they are in a publicly appointed office like his with the Columbus Housing Authority and just looks of impropriety. So let me explain. The director of Parole to Pride is a woman named Sharon Jones. Sharon Jones is a hardworking, very dedicated public servant. She's very passionate about her organization, Parole to Pride, that helps former inmates who are returning to society to find jobs. Now, let's keep in mind that there are many places that actually get government money if they take on former convicts. But let's get back to Sharon Jones. Sharon Jones is a lovely lady married to a guy named Larry Jones. Larry Jones is the maintenance manager at Columbus Housing Authority. Follow me there. With ParoleToPride.org, on their website, Robert Gray 3 Jr., the executive director of Columbus Housing Authority, and Larry Jones's boss is the fiscal manager of Sharon Jones's nonprofit, ParoleToPride.org. Now, if that's not a conflict of interest, I don't know what is. It's very concerning that Sharon Jones has a husband who works under the fiscal manager of her nonprofit at his bigger long-term professional job that he's paid at. I just see that there's so much opportunity there for something not to be right. I want y'all to chew on this a bit, and I want you to think about why this is concerning and all of these little bread trails that I'm finding right now of financial issues that have a lot of questions about, and I bet you have some questions too. Now, do I think there's malfeasance? I don't know. That's not for me to judge. I don't know. I just know that the math ain't mathin', as my daddy would say. Something doesn't add up, especially when we go all the way back to the scam of the truck purchase and the fact that our community is now $90,000 into a $59,000 truck. And the person responsible for all of this is the current executive director and accountant / controller for the Columbus Housing Authority. There just seems to be no oversight and no guidance from their board of how the executive director is handling the business of the Columbus Housing Authority, or how he's not handling the business of the Columbus Housing Authority. Let's not forget that Mr. 3 or his employees wrote a check this May 5th to the scammer for a second time. Now, granted, they caught it and they canceled the check. I don't know if it got mailed first or they caught it as they were printing it. Doesn't matter. They knew that this woman, Nancy Thomas, was the scammer, and yet when they had to send money per their settlement agreement for that truck on May the 5th, they cut the check first to send to the scammer before they realized their error and sent it to Homer Skelton Ford, which is really interesting because this is now 1 year after this mess started. Now, I'm bringing you full circle. Everything I see so far leads me back to question the financial integrity of this organization and the accountability. There's no transparency. They tried to hide from the public the whole truck fiasco. They tried to hide a lot of things because let's start with the website. They've shut the website down. They have no plans to reopen it, even though people who are their residents need to have access to the information that's on there and any prospective tenants. There's a lot of secrecy and lack of candor in this organization, and there's very little transparency. I'm going to continue to ask uncomfortable questions, as I've said already. I want any information that you have. I'm already getting anonymous letters. I'm getting messages in Facebook and through email at tombigbigtales@gmail.com. You are welcome to send an anonymous letter. You are welcome, if you don't know how to be anonymous, just send me a note. You can send it on Facebook. You can send it in messages. You can send it in email, and I'll keep it confidential. If you just say, hey, please, I don't want my name out, I am fine with that. I will not reveal my sources, and I will protect your identity. I especially want to hear from people who live in the public housing in this town. And have you met Mr. Graythree? How often are non-maintenance people on the property? What is it like getting things repaired? What are the facilities like? How are they tended? How difficult is it to get things taken care of? I just want to know what your life is like living in these affordable homes that are supposed to be cared for by the dollars that are in this budget that I'm looking at. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'd like to know more. In the meantime, I'm going to keep digging and find connections and, well, doing what I do best, because I had a really good friend named Johnny Hampton who told me that everything we do, he and I were both always looking for transparency, but in everything we do, it's for the people. And I really want to embrace that ideology, because many of the people who live in these units that are owned by HUD or run by HUD or financed by HUD, they are voiceless, and they don't need to be voiceless. And I want to hear from you, and I want to see what we can do to make our dollars go further in caring for the facilities and the circumstances of where you live. This is our town. These are our people. These are our citizens, our brothers, our sisters, our fathers, our mothers, our aunts. The woman who raised me lives in one of these homes, and she's quite a super senior, and she's super in so many ways. But without the ability to live in one of these units, she would be financially hard pressed to live in another home in this town as a single senior. I stand up for you today, and I say, let's find out what's going on. Until next time, I'm Shannon Evans, and this is the Tom Bigby Tales.